All right, so these are my answers for the questions in part three of task 6.5. First question, with which programming language are you familiar and which do you prefer using? Why? I think that I prefer Angular uh, as a JavaScript framework. And there are many reasons, but I think some of the reasons that I want to zero in on are first, its use of reusable components. This isn't unique to Angular by any means. You see this in other frameworks like React and Vue as well. But it is something that I think Angular handles really well, and it just feels really nice the way syntactically that you use TypeDoc. Sorry, not TypeDoc. TypeScript to do it when writing. Secondly, I like how you use data injections and modules for incorporating additional functionality and moving data around uh, Angular. It's very in terms of code literacy, it's very legible and it's I find it very easy to tell what comes from where. And then thirdly, for Angular, I also particularly enjoy the use of two-way binding, where you have data flowing in both directions instead of just one direction, which is typical for, say, React. Yeah, and then second question. Briefly describe a project that you worked on and any challenges that you faced. How did you solve these challenges? And, regardless of whatever project I face, I've learned to rely heavily on documentation. Um, and being very good at Googling questions, because there's almost always been someone out there who's had a similar question at some point. Just be wary of versioning if you're using a different version of a framework or a library or a package. Yeah, but I can mention that that just yesterday I was trying to figure out how to build a WordPress plugin using React, and I kept running into I kept my issue was that I wasn't seeing any errors, but my plugin wasn't rendering the component I had built for it. So in the end, I figured out that if you go to if you look at the WordPress test site that you're building, and then you go to in the browser, you have the WordPress dashboard. It actually shows errors for your PHP files in there. Many of these errors they won't be shown in your code editor's console, which I wasn't aware of. So I think it also it show you're constantly learning, and I learned within these last few days that you have to constantly familiarize yourself with new tools and how they display errors. So that was just one example. Third question: how do you test and find bugs in your code? Briefly describe the process. Well, um, usually I um, I check what I check what I'm seeing first of all. Like oftentimes you'll check your UI to see if anything like looks out of whack. Apparently, if it's a CSS error, if data isn't being shown, and then I I also check the console to see if I get an error code. Usually, if you get an error code, either if either it tells you where the file which file has the error, which eight times out of 10 it's usually pretty straightforward, and you can figure out what you have to do if there's a missing semicolon, or maybe a missing apostrophe, or some like type error. Those are usually pretty easy to figure out just from looking at the console. If not, then you can always copy whatever error code you're getting, and then throw it into the Google search bar, and then chances are that Google uh, will have the right result for you. Um, Sometimes you end up on a wild goose hunt, where you have to go through a few blocks to find out what you need. I've faced errors also where just by chance, like just by tinkering with stuff, I've been able to either use console log, if for a function, if I need to make sure that the function is called, or if I need to check whatever value is being passed through the console. I can pass that as a parameter, and call it in my console log, or I can use breakpoints in the terminal when I debug. There are many ways to debug. Debugging is an art form in and of itself. And that actually leads me to question 4. In your opinion, what qualities distinguish a great full stack developer from an average one, and why? I think in line with my answer for question 3, I think that first of all, debugging is a skill that's essential, and I think it ties in with your growing experience and um, your patience as a developer. When you're just starting out, everything feels very overwhelming, and you don't necessarily know how to break down a problem and look at the um, compartmentalize a problem, and then look at the constituent parts of what you need to do. I've gotten much better. I'm far from perfect, and I'm learning every single day how to be better at this. But it's something that I'm aware of, that um, that that comes with experience. That you know how to ask the right questions. At the beginning, you don't even know what questions to ask, and then you start getting better at asking questions, which will lead you to answers. Because no, uh, early on, I thought that when I just started out, I thought that everyone had all these statements memorized, that they just knew how to type out every single line of code, which I quickly found out wasn't the case. Um, Being a great coder isn't being a database for lines of code in your head. I think it's more of thinking of yourself as a detective that knows how to problem solve, and knows how to ask the right questions. So yeah, those are my answers for these 4 questions. Thank you.